Tonight on Cosmic Cantina, we're making contact. Well, not us per se, but there have been plenty of alien contactees over time we can chat about. We interview a hypnotherapist about her work with contactees, trying to deal with their experiences and discuss what might be behind the whole phenomenon. So grab yourself a cold one and prepare for stories of love and light from our space brothers. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and every week I go to my favorite bar, Cosmic Cantina, and kick back with my co-hosts, Josh Golombeski and Matt O'Connor. We talk about aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, ancient cultures, and anything from the unseen world that needs a little illumination. Welcome to Cosmic Cantina. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and tonight I am drinking still kombucha, but I have tequila in it this time.
Oh, ooh, nice.
Reposado. What are you guys drinking?
South of the border. I picked up a little cider called Bertie. And it's delicious. It's one of my favorites. It's a pity I won't be able to get this when I get back to the States, but anyway. Cheers.
Nice. It looks cute. I don't use that word, but that's what it looks like.
It is.
Tonight,
yeah,
I am drinking my new favorite tequila, Casamigos. When I was a young man, I never understood how people drank straight alcohol because I was like, that's gross. And now look at me drinking straight alcohol. It's because my taste buds are gone. So cheers to all those friends out there who are having a drink with us as we talk about weird stuff.
Can I just say the progression of Josh? Josh was like, I like red wine, and then he was into gluten-free beer, and now he's like literally drinking hard alcohol. I think all of the butt probe conversations have driven you to drink hard alcohol now.
He might be right.
Observation.
It's just downhill from here.
I'm too excited about disclosure because it's coming, so I gotta get wasted all the time.
Cool.
Yeah, you and everybody else. Well, let's talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. We are going to talk about contact experiences. We've talked about that a lot, but I have a special interview with a hypnotherapist who specializes in people that do have or contact experiences.
Very cool.
And I know the guy's got some interesting stuff to follow up.
Here's what I'm going to do tonight. I looked into a classic contact detail. It has some really weird elements to it, really kind of mystical, paranormal elements to it. It's not just your classic space brothers coming down and reach arounds and butt probes. It's a lot of lights and special effects going on. So
nice.
Wow.
High strangeness.
High strangeness.
I'm in the same boat. I don't like classic straight up. I saw a UFO in the sky and an alien. I have a similar story, but a modern one. I think it's probably the greatest contactee story of the last 100 years, or it's the greatest contactee story I've ever heard, and it's ongoing and it's current, and I can't believe I didn't know about this sooner.
Ooh,
wow.
That's a big call. Big call.
Woo. So before we start the show, I want to give you an update on a show that we did several weeks back. It was on Afghanistan, and we had a section in there on the Giants of Kandahar, or the Giant of Kandahar. And I said it right this time, so everybody calm down.
Back off, Internet.
Back off. Just back off. We had a guy who was actually there reach out to me by email and give me a little bit more background on what he witnessed. So this is kind of interesting. I mean, it's just a little bit more background from somebody who was there in Afghanistan when this call came in. So this guy, I can't say who he is, but he said he was a PJ. He said that he was coming off a PJ's pararescue. Thank you. Okay. He was coming off of a shift when the call came in, and the call basically said that there are a bunch of guys that were not responding to the call, right? So they reached out, and then they couldn't get a hold of these guys, so they wanted to send a team to go check on them. So the story usually goes that it was a Marine unit, but he said it was a Green Beret unit.
Okay.
So that's interesting. He said usually when they respond to a call, if it's something, obviously they're worried about them being in danger, there's some kind of firefight, they usually send a faster helicopter, an Apache helicopter, but they decided to send what they call the Jolly Green Giant helicopter. Ironic.
Yeah.
Which is a slow-moving, bigger helicopter, not something that you would send in a firefight or it was something that you would do to transport something. Interesting.
Okay.
So his thought was that they already knew what was out there, and when they weren't responding to the call, they then put together a task team of all different people from all different countries, loaded them up on the slow-moving helicopter, and went out there to where they were. But to him, it didn't sound like it was something where they were in danger. It was as if they already knew that there was something happening there, and they went to go check it out. Now,
So it seems like they should have been responding to some sort of emergency.
Right.
But they didn't send in the typical emergency team.
Exactly. Exactly.
Interesting.
So basically, the whole area is split up in quadrants, right? Alpha, Beta, Charlie, Delta. Where this team was, where the Green Beret team was, they were in Alpha, but very far, like off the grid, almost off the map. And he said there's nothing there. There's nothing to clear. There's nothing living there. There's nothing. So again, it kind of goes back to the idea that they specifically went out there to find this thing, and that they already a lot of people that were involved in it already knew that it was out there. They went to go investigate it, and it had nothing to do with the Taliban or any of that kind of stuff.
So it isn't like they stumbled across this cave and something attacked them. They specifically went there looking for something.
Yeah, just from what he's saying, kind of happened around this event. That's what it sounds like. That's all these things kind of put that together. Yes, definitely.
Huh.
Wow.
Interesting,
Wow.
right?
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any other information they want to bring forward of any of the stories that we cover, we are happy to broadcast them, and of course we keep all the information confidential because we love you. So thank you
Right on.
so much
Yes, we
for
do.
coming forward and telling us what you had. All right.
Very cool.
So
Awesome.
Into the show. So we're going to talk about contact experiences, but I want to bring up something that I saw today, actually, in the New Yorker. If you're not familiar with the New Yorker, it's a very liberal magazine.
A little hoity-toity, little pretentious, I would say.
A little hoity-toity. A lot of art shows, a lot of Broadway musicals you can read about in the
Well,
New
la-di-da. Yeah.
And the reason, there's one thing that we don't do on this podcast. We don't talk about politics. We really try not to create divisions in how people think, any of that kind of stuff. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a lot of ideas that Fox News is on the edge of disclosure. And they have been putting a lot of stuff out there. I mean, just recently they put something out that there's another UFO sighted off the coast of Florida.
Yeah.
But this is not... This is not just for a certain group of people who are watching Fox News. And when I saw this article in the New Yorker, this hoity-toity, super liberal, bleeding liberal magazine, I could not believe it. This was like a 12-page story on UFOs. And the title is How the Pentagon Started Taking UFOs Seriously. For decades, flying saucers were a punchline. Then the U.S. government got over the taboo. And this article went into everything. So I'm just going to, obviously I'm not going to read the article. We will post it. You can read it for yourself. But they mentioned Stephen Greer right at the top in his disclosure project starting in 1993. They go into Roswell briefly. They talk about Leslie Kean, mostly an independent investigative journalist in the space.
She's great.
She's famous. She's got a couple best-selling UFO books. If you don't know who she is, you should check her out. She's amazing. So she's covered a lot in her journey and covering UFOs because she's kind of they labeled it here too, very militant in her approach to UFOs and making sure she gets to the bottom. They go as far as talking about UFOs in biblical times. They talk about David Jacobs. They get into the fact that in 1952 there were UFOs that flew over the White House, and they reference Philip K. Dick, and this seems like it's out of a novel. They listed every single possible government conspiracy, possible UFO link in this 12-page article, and I could not believe it. And they weren't making fun of it. They were literally saying, does this lead to the fact that UFOs could be real?
Yes.
And Josh says yes. So obviously.
Matt, how
perfect.
excited did you get on a scale of 1 to 10 when Melissa said David Jacobs?
I was excited.
All
right.
We'll say that. All right. Full mast. Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
Just let me get through the article, okay? Just calm down.
Quartermast. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I just want to leave you with this ending part of the article. Again, you can read through this all. This is what it says at the end. The government may or may not care about the resolution of the UFO enigma, but in throwing up its hands and granting that there are things it simply cannot figure out, it has relaxed its grip on the taboo. For many, this has been a comfort. And then this writer goes on from the New Yorker to say that it interviewed a couple people that had seen UFOs, especially pilots, and he says he specifically interviewed somebody from the Tic Tac situation, and he said that people are now apologizing to this person because they know UFOs are real. All right, so I kind of paraphrase the end of that article, but I think, and maybe I'm the only person in the world who thinks this is a big deal, the fact that the New Yorker has published a 12-page follow-through of everything UFO that you can ever think of and saying that it could be real, this is a bigger deal than all the other publications, in my opinion, because we are merging thought processes in our country for one reason only, and that is that there is something going on that the government cannot explain.
Yes, and also the question arises, is this all part of slow drip disclosure? Did the CIA finally get to the media, the liberal media, to put out the story? To me, it's just another article on a long train of bombshell articles that are coming out, and this one, I agree with you, is probably the most interesting since it's coming from the New Yorker. That is, I think, profound. I think, again, in a couple months, we're going to find out a lot more, so very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're probably thinking, okay, well, that's great, and I'm glad we're getting closer to disclosure. What does this have to do with the people that make contact or contactees of, alien situations, abductions, communication, that kind of thing? Well, I think it plays a lot into it, and because we usually think these people are weird. We usually think that they have something wrong with them. They have some kind of they have something that happened to them when they were a kid that could be wrong. But I think what this opens up is that these people might be really in contact with something. And if they are, we really need to listen to their messages. So I interviewed a hypnotherapist from Australia. Hey, Matt.
Know the place. I know people here. Yep.
Do you know her? You probably know her. There's like 5 people there. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you
We're
the
all
third
active.
most famous person in Australia after the Hemsworth brothers? Is that you? It's Matt O'Connor.
Yeah. Stopped on the streets all the time. Hey, you're that drunk guy on YouTube.
Woo!
Nice.
That's you. Her name is Mary Broadwell. She was trained in the UK as a former RN, state-certified midwife, health educator, counselor, and clinical hypnotherapist. She's published numerous articles from her research of over 3,000 cases of extraordinary encounters through her role as a founder and principal of the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network. So here is the interview with Mary. All right, Mary, thank you for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure, Melissa.
So let's jump right into it. There's a lot of people that I have talked to, that my co-hosts have talked to, and stories that we've come across where people have had contact. I like to use the word contact because abduction always feels a little negative. But you have worked with a lot of these people, and I wanted to know, especially into 2019, 2020, 2021, does it seem that the people that are having contact are getting different messages, or there's a pattern in the contact that they're having?
Absolutely. And what is interesting about those messages is it's all about, the planet. It's all about how we treat one another. It's really a very positive message from the numbers that I've personally dealt with, and I've worked with over 3,500 families and children, and it's not just the adults, but it's also the children that are coming out with these kinds of messages.
And this kind of messaging has literally changed within 2019 to 2020. Is that correct?
Well, the messages have been coming through ever since I've worked in the field over 25 years. But what has been very powerful is that actually since 2012, there have been a lot of people that have been activated, as I call it, or, they call themselves, have awakened to the fact that they are looking at the planet in a completely different way through their experiences. And it's the experiences that act as the catalyst for this. And they find themselves changing their diet, their view of the planet. They become less materialistic. Many of them go into healing, and many of them give away their materialistic lifestyle. And this has been very exponential, actually, for this number of years.
So in 2020, though, specifically, has there been a difference in the messaging? For instance, is it more urgent, or is there something specifically they want people to do?
It certainly has. And this is not just the adults I'm getting this from. I'm getting this from children as well, telling me about the fact that we are in an evolutionary shift of consciousness, and that a lot of the children coming in at the moment are saying they've come in to be part of this. They've come in to bring their awareness, their understanding, and their connection to these star visitors. That, you know, as family, they're saying that they've come in to make a difference and have the skills to help with that. And this includes one young man saying he deals with light beings, and they have also told him, you know, I asked him about what he thinks is happening on the planet now. And he said, Mary, this is the reset, in a positive way, not in a negative way.
That's beautiful. What is there any negative experiences they're having? We interviewed somebody a couple podcasts ago where they talked about how there is a lot of there's a lot of amazing beings coming through that are having contact with humans, but there also are some darker contact experience that haven't been before. Have you witnessed any of that, or talked to anybody who's had a negative experience?
Certainly, there's a percentage that have negative experiences, and the survey that we did with the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation demonstrated with 4,000 individuals that 85% noticed a psycho-spiritual transformation, but 15% of them were still very fearful. But we have to understand that although there may be some self-serving ETs, we also have had people that have had experiences with the military that have actually made their experiences very, very fearful as well. So it's a very convoluted and complex thing to actually ascertain exactly what's going on with the range of intelligences visiting the planet.
And just so the audience knows, why did you get into this work? Did you have something happen to you? Did you make contact with anything?
Simply because I was known to be open-minded as a therapist and counselor, that a gentleman came to me and heard that I was open to most things, and he'd had experiences, and he said, Mary, there's no support groups. Everyone thinks you're just crazy. And he said, I'm hoping you'll help me and my family with my experiences, because I know I've been taken on spacecraft. And he said, and the family just think that these are demons. And it was really the catalyst for me to look into this more and more, because what I was finding was working as a hypnotherapist with people with past lives, some of them were having experiences on spacecraft as well. So that broadened my whole understanding. And since then, I've come to understand that many of us, when we connect to our guides, or I call the non-human team, many of them may look like angels, or or other religious figures, but there are those that may be seeing blue beings with big black eyes, or mantis beings, or crystalline beings, or lion beings. So it's gradually educated me into what is actually something we're all connecting to when we open up to our multidimensional selves.
And do you think that those beings that people are seeing are actually a plethora of species that exist within the multidimensional reality, or are they other factions of our higher self that we connect with?
It's a very good question. And I think it's possibly a bit of both, in the sense that when I work with some people, they believe that everything they're experiencing multidimensionally is coming from their superconscious self, which may very well be how we create our reality. But on another level, there are those that I do think belong in not just the physical realm, but the interdimensional realm. And I think there are interdimensionals, extra dimensionals, transdimensionals, and even visitors from our future, as one little 9-year-old explained to his parents that he actually has been a traveler from the future, and he doesn't normally look like this. And he described an ET looking being with only 4 fingers, and saying that is his future self, that he's a time traveler, if you like. So this completely changes the way that we look at our reality when we expand into our multidimensional awareness and what is consciousness ultimately.
Right. Well, this is very interesting because so most of the messages are, and the contact is positive, and there's so many factions of what our reality could exist as that I think the more that we open up to what could be and our potentiality as a human being, we realize that it's just endless. Yes. And maybe that is the message, that there is no prison, there's nothing blocking us. It's just our limited reality.
I think it's exactly that. And the children that I write about in The New Human are all about telling me how they go to other dimensions. In fact, one young man of 10 said he came through a portal in the sun, that he came from another dimension. His soul came from another dimension. I'm hearing this more and more, where a child of 7 tells me that he can travel to other planets in other dimensions. He just needs to know their mathematical number, which is a frequency. And he says he uses the runes as a portal to these planets. Wow. Is how he explains how he goes to these other planets. Many of the children talk about portals, and they can see them around their home, or they can see them where they go. So this is another dimension of our children, our new generations of children, literally experiencing what for the rest of us we're still coming to terms with.
Wow, so fascinating. Well, thank you, Mary, for joining us. And I could interview you for hours, but we only have a couple minutes. So thank you for joining us, and be safe out there.
You're welcome. Thank you, Melissa.
You know, what's interesting about that interview, she didn't specifically say all the messages that were coming through, but it did sound like things have increased a lot. And there's a lot of kids that are coming forth, and they have this same kind of message about the environment, about the planet, about people, about connecting, about evolving. And so I just think that's really interesting. I think sometimes we need clear messages, but what she's saying is there's so many more people that are getting contact, especially children.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I often wonder how many more people are contacted but just like don't want to feel like they're the crazy person who's speaking with entities from another world,
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10, you reckon?
Sorry to cut you off. I watched a Travis Walton documentary recently, and they went into just sightings in general, and it was basically 9 out of 10 aren't reported. So you probably can take the same thing.
Oh, interesting.
Contactees. Yeah. So it's a lot. It's happening a lot more than people realize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because, two things. So if you look at, contactee stories, a lot of them will say that they've been told, even the adults, they've been told they've been watched or monitored throughout their lives since children. And it's only when they were adults that they were contacted. But maybe that sort of situation is changing up a little bit, where they're just being like, you know what? It hasn't worked real well with these adults.
Let's start with the kids.
Try going to the kids.
Start going to the kids.
The kids are more likely to talk about it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
I also think that there's a lot of people that do get contacted when they're kids, but they kind of blow it off as something that happened to them. And then when they become adults, it becomes too chaotic in their head. And that's why they end up maybe in Mary's office to talk about it. But, for these kids that are younger today, in the last 5 years or so, I think there's just more talk about UFOs. So they feel okay talking about it.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Yeah. I think that's part of it. I think conditioning is part of it.
And the messages that these people get seems to be pretty consistent. It's a lot of we're your space bros, and we love you, but here's the thing, you're destroying the planet, so you need to tell people to knock it the fuck off. It's that constant reiteration of you guys need to look after the planet, and we're here to help and that sort of stuff. But man, something just doesn't sit right for me about that that whole messaging. It doesn't feel genuine. It feels
It's not dark enough. Not a dark
little
enough
screen
for you?
memory. It just feels like a little bit of a psyop type of thing for me.
I actually
know.
may be coming around agreeing with you a little bit, but I'm not going full dark on it. And when I get to my story, I think it's also manipulation, but not necessarily with a dark intent. And I'll explain further, Matt. Maybe you and I will finally see eye to eye. Probably not.
Ooh.
Let's see.
Okay, come on,
Maybe
Matt.
we won't have to wrestle this one out. All right.
Come on, let's
Here's
go in the
what I
darkness.
got, guys.
Do it.
Well, this one isn't too dark, actually. My takeaway
I'm
from it
disappointed.
is a healthy amount of skepticism with this one because, like I said, I don't, totally find it unbelievable that this guy was contacted. It's just the nature of the messaging and how people are contacted and who's contacted. It's really weird. It just feels like a kind of like I said, like a bit of a psyop. Like we're just kind of testing something on the people,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Sure.
Let's get to it. So my story is about a fella named Orfeo Angelucci. And he was born in 1912.
Does
So
he
this
like
goes
pasta?
back a little bit. I would imagine so. Big fan, yeah. Anyway, so Angelucci, 1912, he was born. So this kind of all happened post World War II. So Angelucci, he was a factory worker, nothing special, but he had a huge interest in science and aviation. So this all kind of kicked off, he believes, in August of 1946 when he was conducting his own experiments. So what he was doing was launching these balloon arrays, and all these balloons were kind of filled with different molds, I guess. So he's doing this science experiment and testing molds at different altitudes and temperatures and stuff. Not overly interesting for most of us as far as UFOs go, but
Sounds
anyway,
super
it
hot.
seems to.
Super
yeah,
hot.
I know. Tell me about it. Yeah, but it seems to have got him some attention with the Space Bros. So
Okay.
So Angelucci, Orfeo, he maintains that this was an experiment which caught the attention of the Space Brothers. And they specifically chose him to further their agenda, interesting wording, on the planet. So it wasn't until, so this was 46 when he's doing the experiment, but it wasn't until 6 years later in 52 that he actually had his first contact. So here's what happened. Just a bit of history, actually, interesting beforehand. So Angelucci claimed all of his life that he suffered from poor health and extreme nervousness. In particular, that he was really, really terrified of thunderstorms for some reason.
Wow.
And so he did previously live in Trenton, New Jersey, but he moved to California in 48, and he took a job at an assembly line at the Lockheed aircraft plant in Burbank.
Okay, that's in connection.
This is,
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Pre Lockheed Martin, but still, the same.
Right. Further that
Yeah, yeah.
agenda. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
And there was another contactee by the name of George Van Tassel, who also has a famous story, who worked at that same plant, interestingly enough.
I know who that is.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, he moves to California in 48. And then in 52, which was his first contact with the Space Bros, he said he woke in the day with an ominous feeling that something was going to happen to him. And sure enough, it did. So he was working the night shift on this day, finished his night shift at midnight, on his way home, crossing a bridge over the Los Angeles River. And he notes in his story, so he wrote a bunch of books about this actually afterwards, but he noted that this bridge was eerily empty at the time for the place that he was at. So it was just him on the bridge, which is really odd. So this is from a Nick Redfern article that I got this piece. But this is what he experienced. So on the bridge, a large blue-colored ball of light was clearly shadowing him, so it was like moving next to him. The beach ball-sized circle of light took a sudden turn, appearing directly in front of Angelucci's car. Shocked to the core, Angelucci slowed his car to practically walking pace and watched amazed as two small green balls of light emerged from the larger one and floated towards him. So then it says, via telepathy, a booming voice inside of his head informed Angelucci that he had indeed been watched ever since the day of that fateful balloon launch back in 46. So Angelucci was, about to ask the question about he was about to ask this thing questions telepathically, I guess. But the two balls closed in on each other, merged into a larger green light, and in mere seconds, it says, the ball changed into disembodied images of a man and a woman. Or as Angelucci came to learn, they were like floating heads, I guess.
Ooh, I'm in.
And he said, but they were very human looking. And I think I'll describe them later on. But
So just giant floating heads.
Yeah.
See, I've heard that a few times in very obscure cases of people seeing floating heads. It was actually associated with the Mothman prophecies in that area. At the time, people were seeing floating heads in the forest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a rare thing to hear. Okay, go on. Sorry, dude. That was really interesting to me.
Yeah,
do you
no.
think
So
that's
this
more of a government thing or an alien
I don't
thing?
know. This is kind of like a light show because this wasn't a physical being that stepped off a ship. These were lights and you said the images of these people were transparent. So it was almost like this holographic kind of feel to it.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. It's parallel to what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it says, like every other contactee that we hear about, Angelucci was asked, and it said in a noticeably and slightly bullying and patronizing fashion, to spread the word of the supposedly utterly benevolent ETs in their love for humanity. Right? So trust us. We're your friends, bros. It's all right. Don't worry about it. So, and that sort of got me wondering, like, why do these, like, seemingly, insignificant random people just get this enormous task of, like, hey, spread the word, big guy. That we're friendly and we're coming. We're going to help.
And also, why is that very common? Because it seems like most contactee experiences are just nobodies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean...
Not all of them.
I mean, don't you think that part of the human experience and the expression, because being human is sort of about suffering, wouldn't you agree? I mean, like, right. I mean, things are not easy being a human because you have all these emotions. So the way to control the human mind is to give them a mission or a purpose, and then they'll just forget about all the freaking weirdness, and then they would go along with the mission because they feel like they're helping humanity. Because in the core of each human, that would align with their emotional body.
Wow, not to
that's
give
what
you
I
too
would do
much
if I was an
credit,
alien.
that's actually pretty profound, Melissa. I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that you can even see that in your own life. When I'm driven by purpose, I'm happier. When I have something I really got to do, everything else seems like secondary. It's not a big deal. If I have nothing to do, someone could like walk by me and give me the wrong look at work, and I'll be devastated for like 3 days.
That's usually me.
Yeah, it's like once a week, so it's fine.
So aggressive, Melissa. So goddamn aggressive.
She called me a penis today.
I did. I called him a penis today. Well, he said he was asserting his dominance. I'm like, stop being a penis. I mean, it's fair. It's fair. It's fair.
It's marking his territory. Anyway,
back to the story.
Back to Orfeo. So, this voice obviously told him that they've been watching him over the years, but they also said to him that he was the first human that they'd contacted. And this was in, 52 or something like that? Which was interesting, I thought. Like,
Okay,
this
again,
race of aliens.
let's give the humans a purpose and then tell them they're the only one. Ooh.
Yeah, like you're
Okay, go
special.
ahead.
Yeah. This was interesting, I thought. So they also materialized a cup full of liquid that Angelucci drank.
Oh, don't
Which
do that,
was
Angelini.
Really weird.
Don't do that.
Yeah. So you can see why people like, Jacques Vallée liken these events to those old Fade folk tales,
Yeah.
Because that's a big thing in them is they're constantly offered food or drink. And the idea is don't drink it, otherwise you'll be stuck in the Fey world for the rest of your days.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so you see some similarities popping up here. So then it says that was his first
Did he get roofied?
contact. I don't know. But he alien roofies. But he made it home after that. And then we'll get to that. So 2 months later, his second contact occurred. And this time Angelucci actually entered into the saucer, what he calls the saucer, but it was this kind of iridescent ball of light, which is weird. And he describes it as a large soap bubble.
Okay.
So it was a sphere, basically.
Okay.
So he said the interior was iridescent, and he felt like he were in some sort of dream state. And this is where I start thinking, like, is this like a screen memory? Like, he doesn't feel like he's fully in control, maybe? Like, what was that stuff that he drank? I don't know. And his visit ended in another mystical-like experience, during which a blinding light projected him beyond time and space, and his life became crystal clear. He came to understand the mystery of life and found himself lost in a timeless sea of bliss. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Sounds like roofies.
Yeah, he got some MDMA slipped in his Casamigos.
Yeah, doesn't it feel like it just sounds like it sounds like a trip,
tequila.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he works
It
for
sounds
Lockheed
like
Martin.
Right, and they gave him a trip.
Right.
So his third encounter was on August 3rd, and this time he came face to face with physical beings, apparently. And he was told of an impending war that would be followed by a new age of brotherhood. Interesting. I don't know when this is supposed to happen, but so this is what happened. But on this third occasion, so he's back on the bridge again. So each time these contacts happened, it was on his way home from work from the Lockheed place, and he would seemingly be approached in the same area over and over again.
Okay.
Interesting little note.
Yeah.
So this man and this woman appeared again. And he says they both looked about the age of 35. The male entity, which called himself Neptune, weird name for, you know. He warned Angelucci.
I guess it's better than Uranus.
True.
God,
Wait,
I'm
done.
just saying.
Well done.
You get the award for the obvious. Good joke, though. It was good. That was actually good. But that seems not credible. But what I think is they're giving names that they can understand. So it doesn't mean it's BS. It means they're like, oh, this guy will get Neptune. It'll sound spacey to him. Anyways,
this adds to my kind of theory of like screen memory. But anyway.
Okay.
So Neptune. He warns Angelucci that our solar system had been home to numerous earlier civilizations that had destroyed themselves, and unless we changed our obviously dangerous ways, we would be the next in this long and sorry list of casualties. So pretty common story fed to these contactees over and over again.
Yeah, it is.
And so Angelucci was given this task from Neptune, and he said, you should write these books, which he eventually did, on his experience and get the word out to the public. So he did right up until 1993, where he died at the age of 81. But he wrote a series of books all about his encounters and what they were telling him. So just these last little pieces here, which were kind of interesting. So in Orfeo's book, The Secret of the Sources, which he released in 1955, he encountered flying saucers and their friendly human-appearing pilots. Obviously, like I said before, driving home from the factory that he worked at. He said these superhuman space people were handsome, often transparent, and highly spiritual. Eventually, Angelucci was taken in an unnamed saucer to orbit the Earth, where he saw a giant mothership drift past a portal.
Wow.
Interesting. So, like some interdimensional stuff possibly happening there, or maybe a wormhole or something that they can open up. And then he also describes having an experience missing time over a number of different periods.
Wow.
So, there's moments where he doesn't know what's going on, and they're obviously doing something to him, with him. Again, this doesn't feel like Space Brothers to me.
Right.
It's just the story that they're feeding him to kind of like whitewash what's really happening and behind the scenes. So Neptune says they're from a more evolved society and they live on the largest asteroid. I don't know what that means, but so obviously a big floating celestial body that's an asteroid, and it's part of the remains of a destroyed planet. So it's basically all that's left of their civilization. Interesting story. Not your classic contactee story, kind of a bit more sort of light show mystical stuff. And I'm a little skeptical of, not that it happened, more that what is the purpose of this? I don't know that these, advanced intelligent beings, surely they can work out like telling random insignificant people about this and having them spread the word isn't going to work. Like they obviously need to go big, something, why not just, if they need to get this message out and they can appear to someone, why not appear to large groups of people and, really get the word out there?
Yeah,
so,
but they need something from this guy, right?
Yeah.
So they need to give him a purpose, and so he does start spreading the word. I mean, there are famous people that have had encounters too, but I think there's not all different species or aliens, if people are getting contacted, are equal. Like their missions are not all to help humanity. But we have to, to control a state of being, you'd have to tell them that was the purpose.
Well, one, we're assuming these advanced beings understand that. Maybe they think every human is going to tell everyone it's going to be okay. Or two, it's a slow, long acclimation to what's happening. And he's just one. They were like, all right, let's go pick 1,000 people around the world, and then they'll write books about it. It'll be great for 50 years. And then in 2010, we'll do this. And then 2020, we'll really start breaking shit down. And in 2021, that's when we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe it is like the long game. But
right.
I don't see that. I mean, maybe they just don't understand human cynicism. They just like,
maybe they don't understand humans that good either.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, we're assuming they know everything about us. We abduct things from the Amazon, and then we seem like gods to them, but we don't fully understand them. We're literally like, holy shit, this monkey's all over the place. It's shit in its cage. Like, like we assume too much. Like, they're not infallible. They're not perfect. They're not God, even though if we might think they're God, which I'll get to next.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, I just this. What I don't kind of trust is this whole story of, hey, we're here to help, and please spread the word that you can trust us, and that just let us help, and we'll kind of save the day for everyone. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels a lot like those channeled beings, that kind of are your friends to begin with, but then lead you astray.
Sure.
Anyway,
Literally.
that's my take.
Wow.
I mean, I don't disagree completely, but Josh, what do you got?
Well, I think the truth is somewhere in between. I think the story will help explain that. This is my favorite story in the UFO world I've ever read. My favorite mass sighting is the Phoenix Lights. This is my favorite contactee story because it says everything I want to say about the phenomenon. That this phenomenon probably is the religious experience. I don't mean to offend anyone, but you'll understand why I think that after this, and it's consistent with other stories throughout time and history. So I came across, I'm big on Twitter. I'm big in the crypto Twitter and the alien Twitter, the disclosure Twitter. And one people I followed Tom DeLonge, and he posted this picture that we talked about in the podcast of this family who took a photo of a being in the forest while they were walking. They didn't even know it was there, and they just snapped a photo. So that came from the Bledsoe family in North Carolina, and their story is unbelievable. Someone said this once, and I agree with it. It's like the best known unknown story of modern times when it comes to UFOs. Like, how I didn't really wasn't all over this behooves me, and let me just break it down. So Tom DeLonge sent that tweet. I was like, who's this person who sent it? It came from a guy named Ryan Bledsoe, this young man who's dropping prophetic knowledge on Twitter. Like, everything he writes is I'm like, damn, this kid's in his 20s, and he's just saying things that like someone really wise would say. And I was like, how does he have all this experience? I come to find out his father, his name is Chris Bledsoe, and Chris Bledsoe is the center of an amazing story that I'm gonna break down for you. There's so much going on, and I'm gonna get to the best stuff, but not all of it. So this took place in Fayetteville, North Carolina. It began in January 2007 on the Cape Fear River. It's ongoing to this day. This is just the inciting incident. Okay, Chris Bledsoe was a former commercial pilot who owned a successful building business. He was celebrating the end of a contract with 3 other guys and his son. They all decided to go fishing on the Cape Fear River. this is what happened. They're all fishing. It's like 2:30 in the afternoon. This is the first incident. Chris is like, I'm going to take a walk and go see what's up. Just walk around, whatever. He walks up this path, this hill, and he sees these 2 orbs. And he's confused. He isn't really sure what they are. He's like, is that the sun? Why is there 2 of them? What is that? And as he gets closer, he realizes he's seeing something unusual. He starts to get scared. And the moment he goes to turn to run, another orb suddenly appears right over him and then centers itself with the other 3 orbs. 3. There's 3 orbs. And that is important. I'll get to that at the end of the story, why 3 is
so
weird.
very, very much like what Angelucci saw. There's the floating orbs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parallels.
Combined. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And I'll get into like on his property regularly. Orbs getting smaller and bigger, splitting, combining, the whole 9 yards. That happened for the last decade to this guy. This incident, he was like, holy shit. So he runs, he gets scared at this point, and he starts thinking of his son and the guys, and he runs back to the camp. He comes running into the camp, and he's like, oh my God, guys, oh my God. And they're like, where have you been? And he's like, what do you mean? I left 10 minutes ago. And he looks around, it's kind of getting dark. Missing time. He's been gone for 4.5 hours. He has no idea what happened. He's like, okay. And he realizes his son's not there. And he's like, where's my son? Chris Jr. Eventually, Chris Jr. comes back like a few minutes later. They find him. Different experience. Saw the orbs, got scared that his father was missing, went looking, and came across orbs, kind of hid from him, but he couldn't hide. Like they knew where he was. And then one got really close. Same thing as you, Matt. The orb like changed into somebody. So all of a sudden, 3 like typical, not grays, I wouldn't call them grays, but small diminutive aliens with like smaller eyes, playful, appear. One staring right at him. And he's like, oh my God. The other 2 are like playfully on the ground, and he was they're in like a public area, and there was like a trash can or something, and they were just like playing with bottles on the ground. And like the one was staring at him, but the other 2 were like scattering around and like having fun, which will make sense later. Go on.
Yeah. This is what I mean about this whole screen memory thing, or just like appearing to people as, so it seems like a really similar setup of these balls of light combining and then transforming into a being.
Yeah.
Obviously, so Orfeo's story is he saw very human-looking people, but maybe that was for him specifically because he was a nervous guy and seeing alien beings or whatever would be a problem.
I agree.
But for this kid, these playful little beings are jumping around. So it just seems like it caters itself to whoever's viewing the situation. I don't know.
That's true.
That's really interesting, Matt, because later, I'll get to it later, but like basically those 3 little things he saw were kids. So imagine they knew he was a kid going to get scared, and they sent down the kids to kind of interact with him for a second.
Right. Yeah.
So Chris Bledsoe comes back to the camp, same thing, missing time. Those 3 guys that were with him witnessed orbs. They all kind of took off. They were all kind of like, what the hell's going on? They were looking for both of them within these hours. They drive off. These orbs start following them. A creature is like running on all 4s behind their truck at one point, like chasing them.
Oh my God.
Which is scary. Like, again, it's scary, but this whole thing is not scary, but that's scary. Like, what's it doing? It's running at them like on all 4s, one of these little kid creatures, and these balls of light are following them. They're all like, what the hell's going on? To get me out of here. So they all book off, and they go home. This is all the same night. Chris comes home with his son. His son, poor son, is young and just terrified and doesn't know what's going on. The rest of the family's not at home. They went somewhere that weekend for this incident, but the family's witnessed a lot of stuff since. And Chris is like, what's going on? What's going on? He has a dog, he's a hunting dog, that starts going crazy on the back porch and like is just like insane about something. And he's like, go get him. You go get him, whatever his name is. And it runs off. So he's chasing the dog, trying to figure out what's going on. He doesn't know what's happening. He feels like something's watching him. And then he comes around, and then he slowly like, he hears a voice, like he's like, oh my God. He comes around a corner, and then all of a sudden he sees an entity. Kind of similar to what the son saw, but it was like translucent. It looked like it was dipped in glass. It had red eyes, which sounds scary. And believe me, I think that's scary
totally.
too. And he goes, I surrender. I don't mean any harm to you. That's what Chris says to the alien. And the alien goes, if we're calling it an alien, interdimensional, whatever, in his head, telepathy says, you're reading me wrong. I'm here to help you. And then suddenly Chris completely like melts and feels way better. His dog whips around the corner, and the creature disappears. Okay, this is the first event and not the most interesting. So what happened? Okay. The next day at 10 o'clock in the morning, Chris is obviously so out of it and like, this is crazy. His family's not believing him. We'll get to that in a second. He panics at like 10 in the morning, goes, crap, I didn't take my medicine. He has Crohn's disease, which was really severe, and he's been dealing with it for a long time. Gone. No effects of it. Over the next couple months, got tested, nothing. Crohn's disease, 100% gone. They healed him. done, miraculous healing. He was like, what is going on? Later in the story, not at this time period, his father got cancer, I forget which type, and they couldn't, it was like terminal. They were giving him like days to live or like months to live. And he kept praying to the sky. He saw this all through a religious lens. He still says to this day they're angels. And he prayed, and then his father's cancer miraculously disappeared, like way too quick, like within a day. Got tested, oh my God, went to another hospital, and it was completely gone. Backing up. For like a year, Chris was obviously ostracized by his community, his own family in some sense. He almost got a divorce, and it was causing a lot of stress. It also started to cause a lot of attention. He really struggled with it, and then slowly started talking about it more and more and more. MUFON got involved. A lot of people got involved. There started to be constant activity on the farm where they would see orbs all the time. You can go on YouTube. There's plenty of videos. This guy has lots of evidence. Light beings, orbs, sounds. There was at one point a tree just spontaneously combusted in front of him. There's all this stuff that's really, really, really interesting. But the story that blew my mind and also connects to so much, that is so profound in the religious experience, is called The Lady in White. So on Easter Sunday, years later, I actually didn't write down the date, so I apologize. This is all within the last 12 years. He wakes up at 3 a.m. and he hears, "Arise." And he's like, what? He wakes up and creepy AF at the end of his bed.
Like, what?
"Arise." Like, come on, aliens. Like, be cool, be modern. Be like, yo, what up, yo? Get up, Chris. Let's go, bro. No,
exactly.
Wake up, man.
"Arise." Yeah. Come on, bro. So he sees 3 shadow beings at the end of his bed. And he's like, oh. And at first he was terrified. But then all of a sudden, he said, like, he must have get put in a trance. And the shadow beings had, like, cloaks on, and he thinks they had cloaks on because they were light beings, and the cloak somehow hid the light so it wasn't so shocking to him. It's funny. It's scary, but maybe in some sense, they were trying to not scare him by being dark, which is just interesting when you get into, like, are you scared of these things or not? Like, they're trying to not scare you maybe, and they're just messing up because they're not perfect. So he goes into a trance state. He just gets dressed, and he remembers getting dressed, but he remembers like suddenly just being like in a trance for several minutes. Like, he remembers it all, but he doesn't remember being scared. He's like, just shadow beings in my bed. I should be terrified. And they lead him out to the woods, and he follows them. And he comes to the edge of his property, and there's a dog kennel there. They used to raise dogs in, but there's no dogs there now. And all of a sudden, this object, this is when the high strangeness and the weirdness, like, I don't even have speculation or a theory for what happened. He's handed like a cylindrical object that's kind of prickly and furry. It's alive. Like, it's like you're holding an animal and it's like breathing, but there's no head, legs, or anything. And he drops it, and he's like, what is this thing? And in his head, the shadow people are like, that's your burden. And he's like, what? And then they kind of disappear. Now, I don't have a follow-up for that device he had in his hands. He doesn't really go back to what it was or anything, but he pointed out this weird thing he was handed. A second later, he feels a rush of wind, and he turns, and all he says is, a portal opened. And through the portal, all of a sudden, a gigantic, normal size, which is big for us, a bull, like a cow, like a bull with horns, rushes out of it, but it's translucent, and it's a little different, but it's a full-size bull, like runs him over. And he falls down. Obviously, it wasn't physical because he would be killed. And he's like, what the fuck? And he lands, and he's all confused. He gets up. This all happens in seconds. And he's like, where's this bull? Like, what the hell's happening to me? This is madness. He turns, and there's a woman floating in the air 3 feet off the ground. He calls her the Lady in White, the most beautiful woman he's ever seen in his life, in all white, kind of translucent, blonde hair, blue eyes, very Aryan, which is interesting. And I'll get to
Nordics.
Well,
Watch out.
Maybe, but I have an interesting theory about this. I wonder if the same experience happened to someone in China or India, if their religious point of view would have changed what he saw. But let me get to that. So he looks at this woman, and the woman starts talking to him. Not in his head, just starts speaking. And says, this is your burden. Your burden is to tell this story to the world, just like your story, Matt. It's a common thing with contactees. And you must tell the world. He doesn't really go into, like, you're messing up the planet or tech. What he goes into, which is even more compelling, is prophetic messages. The woman gives him, like, futuristic prediction after prediction after prediction after prediction, and downloads of technology after technology after technology. And he won't go into all of them because what he said, this is why people don't think it's credible, but I think it is, because it gets even crazier, and so many people come to this guy's property. It's unbelievable. And tells them all the stuff. He only gives out a few things on one of these podcasts I listened to where he was telling the story. But he wouldn't give it to her. She said, share this with the world, but then all these scientists got involved. and said, don't share this. Like, this is something that we need to study and give us all the predictions and the tech. And then apparently all these people took his downloads and made technology out of it, and also took the messages of the future. And he won't really say it. Like, even like today, he won't really say it. He's really hardcore about like carrying the burden, which he said go tell people, but he's not. He's telling like the scientists. It's kind of confusing actually, where I don't really I understand his moral compass there. But the reason why this story is really cool, I got a little bit more to go on this, but it reminds me of this book I read called The Mojave Incident. The Mojave Incident is this crazy story in the Southwest where these two Mormons, a couple, were out camping and crazy UFO experience happened, but at the end of it, a lady in white came down and was all like lovey and knowing and made them feel a lot better about what was happening. So it's a common theme. And also the lady in white, what is that? That's Mary Magdalene. So throughout history, these visions of kids or people seeing the Virgin Mary coming down and speaking to him and giving him messages. It's the same exact thing.
Yeah, but also Native American cultures, that's called the white buffalo woman. It's not called so it goes across religious texts or religious belief systems, because there's a lady in white. I mean, they obviously didn't know who the Virgin Mary was, but they also refer to this woman called the white buffalo woman, who always comes to give messages and save the village.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. See, I didn't know that. My theory was that depending on your culture and your background, you would have seen something different. Like they just use your... Oh, okay, let me keep going because I have a theory at the end of this. That's interesting.
That's
actually
really interesting, though, because it's like it's still the woman in white. So whatever your belief system is, it would make sense, right?
True. I just thought it was weird that like it was a white woman with blue eyes and blonde hair. I'm like, that just seems like Anglo-Saxon. You're a Catholic. You live in a very religious Southern Bible Belt place. That's what it's going to show you to make you comfortable, to get you motivated to do something. That's what I thought. But what you're saying actually is changing my opinion. So when we get to the end here, we'll argue about it because I thought that was weird. So science. So after this incident, like I don't remember the timeline exactly. I listened to like 3 podcasts, watched a show, read 15 articles, and found some nuggets that weren't in any of them. So I'm trying to tie it all together. But like Hal Puthoff, all these major scientists, everyone, people from NASA, CIA, constantly visiting him. Tom DeLonge, Luis Elizondo.
Really?
Yeah, and they all kept telling him to keep it quiet, even though the lady said it was his burden. So like that's legit too. When I say NASA, CIA, that's all verified. That's not like, oh, I'm just saying that he said that. This guy is just like he's not a simple guy because he owned a building company, but he's definitely like low key and like there's no reason for this guy to be lying. You know, like it's definitely like more of a simple dude. But I don't mean simple like not intelligent, just more like down to earth country boy. You know,
humble.
Yeah, humble. There you go. Yeah, because he's definitely not an idiot.
Yeah.
So later in life.
Something happened to him, obviously.
It's ongoing too.
So happening to him. Yeah. Okay.
Right, and the fact that he's not telling everybody and writing books about it, that's actually more fascinating. Like, what is happening? Because usually these people really want to tell people, but he's not really getting it out there. He's giving it to people that can make the technology.
Right, but I don't know if that's the right answer because the lady in white's like, just tell everybody. Your burden is to carry the story, even if you get ridiculed. And he kind of did that, but now he's kind of talking. I mean, it's not clean. It's not like life. It's not like black or white. Like he struggled with it for a long time. Like he didn't talk about it for a year and a half till he finally came out of his house. Like his whole life almost fell apart. So he got regressed a few times, and a couple things I want to bring up that will help tie in the story that I thought were really interesting was one, this is a random thing, he piloted a craft. This whole time he talks about orbs, but then he gets regressed and talks about entering an egg-shaped craft and using consciousness technology to fly the craft. The beings let him fly the craft, and his hands merged in, and it was all like his thought, which we've heard a million times on a million different shows, that that's what happens. It's consciousness-controlled technology. The ship itself had a soul. Really interesting. But the beings he saw on the craft in regression, he said were tall grays. He said tall, slender, alien creatures. And I was like, interesting. And they asked him, who were the small ones that your son saw and that you may have saw in the woods that night with your dog? And then he said in the regression, that was the kids. So they sent the kids down to play. That's what he said. The kids just were playing. And that's why they went down to talk to Chris Jr. They just came down. They're playing with the trash and bottles, not knowing what it is. They're just kids. So it was like kid aliens. I thought that was really cool.
I don't know why that's super cute to me.
Yeah, it just means they're just beings. They're like, oh, let the kids run loose for a little bit in this person's backyard. You know, like whatever. But the tall grays. So this brings me to my theory, which you kind of shattered, Melissa, actually. So it's an evolving theory now. No, this is good. This is why we're talking. I mean, I couldn't
Well, the white
research everything.
buffalo woman definitely doesn't have blonde hair and blue eyes because they're Native American, so she had dark hair. But
See, then maybe I'm right. Then that's my theory is that different depending where you are, they look at your history and go, okay, how do we get to this person to motivate them? I don't know what their motivations are, but it doesn't seem so dark. Like what it seems like is these tall, thin, gray aliens mess with you. Like the lady in white was not a real being. Like in the Mojave incident or this incident, it was just them being like, okay, let's show this guy something that he'll relate to, that will have a profound impact on him. He has a Catholic background. Let's show this woman who he's going to connect to and think is the Virgin Mary. That's what I think is going on. So the manipulation, Matt, I do agree with you. We're being manipulated, but not necessarily for dark intent. And the other part of this that was cool that connects to Catholicism in a way is 3. There was 3 orbs. There was 3 shadow beings. The 3 kept coming up. They keep seeing 3 orbs all the time, and you wonder the Trinity, exactly. And I was like, I could see how all that stuff would develop based off something like this happening to someone 2,000 years ago. They'd be like, holy cow. And then, of course, the religion would start. Of course, you would say all this crazy stuff. And I don't know. This is an ongoing story. The guy's still alive. He's still covered to this day, still posting stuff on Twitter and YouTube. And I think it is the most profound and incredible contactee story I've heard, especially in modern times.
Wow. Yeah, no, I agree.
Something to follow, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You should give us updates as soon as you get anything new.
I will.
Because it's
I'm
really
on it.
fascinating. And I think that, we started this podcast off talking about this New Yorker article, and I think that not only the government is taking it seriously, but I think more people are realizing that people are having these experiences, and whatever is happening, I think we need to listen. So whether it's a manipulation, whether it's negative, whether it's positive, I think as humans we need to collect all that data and figure out what is happening, what is it they want, and who are they. And I think that's really important. I think that we're all waiting for something, for a message, because a lot of us humans can't figure it out. So I think that contact experiences should be taken seriously, and we should just figure out what the purpose is. And that's part of our human experience.
I agree.
like it.
I agree.
All right. So have a good night. Be careful out there. Unless you want to get a message, make sure you tell us.
Goodbye.